Imagine your body as this incredible self-repairing machine. Cuts heal, bones mend. But what if you could give that internal repair crew a really significant boost? Today, we're taking a deep dive into a stack of your sources on cocoa flavanols. We're exploring how these, well, remarkable compounds might directly enhance your body's own vascular repair system.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is that the lining of your blood vessels, the endothelium, it's not just a pipe, it's actually a dynamic organ. Super critical. It's constantly being repaired. And when that process gets impaired, endothelial dysfunction, they call it, that's like foundational for almost all major heart diseases.
Okay, so impairment there is bad news.
Very bad news. So figuring out how to support its function is, well, it's vital for long-term health.
Right. Let's unpack this repair crew concept then.
Yeah.
The sources talk about these circulating angiogenic cells, CACs, and EPCs too.
Exactly. CACs, endothelial progenitor cells, or EPCs, think of them as originating in your bone marrow. They're like these tiny, specialized paramedics, basically, ready to be mobilized to swoop in and fix vascular damage.
Little paramedics, I like that.
And the number of them floating around, especially specific types like the CD34 plus KDR plus cells, that number is actually a really powerful biomarker.
A biomarker.
Meaning it tells you something important about your cardiovascular health. A higher count. That's linked to better outcomes, lower risk of cardiovascular death. It even helps predict long-term survival.
Wow, okay.
And the evidence suggests cocoa flavanols might sort of unlock a bigger supply of this crew you already have.
Okay, that's a pretty big claim. Boosting the repair crew with cocoa. What's the actual evidence look like? Is it solid?
Well, that brings us to a really key study, Heiss et al. From 2010. It was a proper study, randomized, double-mask crossover, pretty rigorous for this kind of research. They looked at 16 patients who already had stable coronary artery disease. And crucially, these folks were already on good medical therapy, including statins.
Okay, so they're already being treated. And what did the cocoa do?
The results were, well, quite striking. They found a 2.2-fold increase in those circulating angiogenic cells.
2 times more repair cells.
Yes, after just 30 days, they were taking 750 milligrams of high-flavanol cocoa daily. And it wasn't just cell numbers. They also saw a 47% improvement in flow-mediated dilation, FMD.
FMD. That's how flexible the blood vessels are, right? How well they relax.
Exactly. Shows better vessel function. Plus, their systolic blood pressure went down. So the key takeaway was these effects seemed to be additive. They happened on top of the standard care the patients were already getting.
Additive is really significant.
It is. Now, it's important to remember it was a small study, just 16 people, but it really laid the groundwork for understanding the how.
Right, the mechanism.
Yeah.
How does this work? Is it like magic? How are these flavanols doing this?
Not quite magic, but it is elegant biology. The research points pretty strongly to one specific compound, epicatechin. That seems to be the main bioactive player here.
Okay, epicatechin. So what does it do?
It basically flips a switch. It activates an enzyme, eNOS endothelial nitric oxide synthase. Activating eNOS leads to a surge in nitric oxide, NO. And NO is this master signaling molecule.
Nitric oxide, I've heard of that. Important for blood flow.
Critical for blood flow, yes. But here it does more. It signals the bone marrow. And that signal triggers the release of these repair cells. It activates something called MMP9, which is kind of like cutting the ropes that tether the cells in the marrow.
Cuts the ropes, lets them loose.
Pretty much. Then there's another system, the SDF1C XCR4 system, think of it like a biological GPS. It guides these newly released cells to the exact spots where damage needs repair.
Wow. Okay, that's a complex but really neat cascade. So for you listening, if you're thinking about this, here's a really practical point. Not all cocoa is the same, right?
Absolutely. Critical point. You need natural non-alkalized cocoa. It's often called non-Dutched, the Dutching or alkalizing process, which makes cocoa darker and less acidic. It destroys most of the flavanols, so you lose the benefits.
Right, so check the label. What about dosage? How much do you need?
Well, the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, they have an approved health claim that 200 milligrams of flavanols can help with blood flow, that FMD we mentioned. But for this repair cell mobilization effect, the studies, like Heiss, suggest you need more like 750 to 900 milligrams per day.
750 to 900. That sounds like a lot. Can you get that from like regular chocolate?
It's very difficult. You'd likely consume a huge amount of sugar and fat trying to get that dose from typical chocolate bars. So you really need to look for specific high-flavanol cocoa products or potentially supplements designed for this.
Okay, good to know. Now, here's something I found really interesting in the sources. That 2.2-fold increase in CACs you mentioned. Apparently, that's similar on par with what you see from statin therapy or even in intensive exercise programs.
That's right. It puts it in perspective, doesn't it? It suggests that cocoa flavanols could be a really powerful complementary strategy, not necessarily replacing other things, but adding another layer of support for your cardiovascular system.
A complementary tool. Okay.
Right. And maybe we should touch on the Cosmos trial briefly, because that adds another dimension.
Right, Cosmos. That was huge, wasn't it? Over 21,000 people.
Yeah, older adults, they took 500 milligrams of flavanols daily. Now, the main goal, the primary endpoint, which was looking at all cardiovascular events, combined things like heart attacks and strokes that didn't reach statistical significance overall.
Ah, okay, so it didn't prevent all events.
Not significantly in the main analysis, but here's the really fascinating part. They saw a dramatic and statistically significant 27% reduction in cardiovascular death.
Wait, say that again. Not events, but death from cardiovascular causes.
Exactly. 27% lower risk of dying from a cardiovascular event. And in the group that stuck strictly to the protocol, it was even higher, a 39% reduction.
That's a massive difference.
Yeah.
So it might not stop every heart attack, but it makes them less likely to be fatal.
That seems to be the implication. It suggests flavanols might be working on resilience, making cardiovascular events perhaps more survivable. It's a really profound potential benefit, a game changer, potentially.
Okay, let's recap this for you then. Cocoa flavanols seem to offer this unique dual action. On one hand, they improve blood flow, the flexibility of your vessels, and on the other, they seem to profoundly enhance your body's own built-in repair system by boosting these circulating angiogenic cells. It's like giving your internal paramedics a serious upgrade.
Precisely. And it leaves us with a really interesting thought to ponder, doesn't it? As we learn more, especially about, say, the gut microbiome and our individual genetic differences, how might we eventually use personalized nutrition to fine-tune this, to potentially amplify the power of this natural tool for your specific cardiovascular resilience? That's where things could get really exciting.